Today we are going to discuss and read Dover Beach by Mathew Arnold. And before I discuss and analyze the lines with you, just a little information on the poem. The poem Dover Beach, which is written by Mathew Arnold, it was written shortly after he got married, and he made a visit to the small town called Dover, which is on the southeastern England. Okay, and this town of Dover, it is the closest town to France than any other port in England. If you take a look at the map and the geographical location of England, and you shall see that this UK is separated from the mainland Europe through a channel of water which is called the English Channel. So UK is like an island, and the mainland Europe, the last country here near England is France. So, and that the point in England which is closest to the French coast is Dover. So he was in Dover with his wife, his new wife, in 1851, and he had stopped there for a while. And from the beach of Dover, you could actually see the coast of France. There was just hardly a stretch of water in the middle, and small boats or ferries could even take you from the Dover beach to the coast of France. And this stretch of water was called the Strait. The Strait of England, it separates the town from the coast of France. There was this narrow stretch of water called the Strait. We shall find in the poem different points of views. Sometimes we hear the voice of the poet talking to us. Sometimes the poet is speaking to his wife, his beloved, and sometimes it's not the poet talking to us, but it is an omniscient narrator. So there are different points of views in the poem, and the poem has this melancholic, mournful tone, and it's like an elegy. It moves like an elegy. An elegy is a poem written on the death of someone. So it's like it is as so mournful that it moves like an elegy. But it has the intensity of a dramatic monologue because he's talking. So both the qualities are there in this poem. The central message of the poem is the loss of faith that Arnold was so obsessed with, the idea of loss of faith in the Victorian society as a result of scientific postulates such as the evolutionary theory of the English physician Erasmus Darwin and French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. So both of these had proposed the theories on the origin of man, and which had caused skepticism and resulted in the loss of faith amongst people. So the central theme of the poem is a loss of faith, loss of religion, loss of belief in God. Arnold was a believer in God and religion, but he also supported an overhauling of the religious thinking. He saw that the old teachings were not enough in his society, in his world. So he believed that they needed to mold or shape religion to fit the needs of the Victorian age, of his times, and maybe that is why he thought of giving this semi-religious status to poetry also. In God and Bible, in his own work, he wrote, and I'm going to read it out for you. He said, "At the present moment, two things about Christianity religion must surely be clear to anybody with eyes in his head. Two things. One is that men cannot do without it." So one thing is that men cannot do without Christianity. They cannot do without religion. The next is, he says, the other is, they cannot do with it as it is. He says, and the other thing is that the mankind cannot learn anything from Christianity as it is now. So they needed to change it, they needed to reform it, they needed to adjust it, adapt it, mold it according to the needs of those times. Maybe you can connect him to the ideas of our own great poet Allama Iqbal, who in his times also suggested reformation, also suggested in his book titled The Religious Thoughts in Islam. I'm forgetting the name actually, but in his own work he's spoken about the need to establish religion according to the new demands of the time. So Arnold favored his religion, Christianity, and he wanted it to play a dominant role in the society, but he understood that in order to bring it at par with those scientific postulates or with intellectualism, they needed to change it, they needed to reshape it, they needed to remodel it maybe. The poem is not a very long poem. You shall see that it's composed in 3 stanzas, 3 irregular stanzas. They don't have a fixed length, the stanzas. So it is it's not a regular it's not in a regular fashion. It is a short poem, but it is a deeply philosophical poem. He's in a deeply contemplative, mournful, melancholic mood, and you may be surprised why he's so when he's on honeymoon and he's gone with his newly wedded wife, but you know, he is still disturbed by the thoughts of these things in the society. Let us look at the poem now. He says, "The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits." Now the sea, look at the imagery of calm he's creating. He's going to do that in the first 6 lines for you. He is at the beach. He's at the Dover beach. Okay, he's in this small town overlooking and where he's staying, where this place that he's staying with his wife, it is on the beach, and he can see from his window. He's standing at the window and he can see the sea before him. He can even see as far as the French coast, and he can see the waves splashing and hitting the land. So the view is open before him. He describes the scene as calm. He says the sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. It must be a full moon, and when the moon is full, you know the tide is full. So he says that the tide is full, and still the sea is calm. You see. But he says the moon lies fair and upon the straits. So the moon is shining clearly, is visible. The moonlight has shone and lit up the whole place, and he can see the straits, he can see the waves, he can see the water. And a strait, as I've described here, is a narrow waterway which connects 2 larger bodies of water, or the channel of water. So, so he creates for you this scene of peace and calm. And he says, on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. So he's on the beach, and he can also see as far as the French coast. And from the French coast, he sees a light blinking, gleaming, and then going out. And then he says, the cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. And the cliffs of England, he says, they are glimmering because it's moonlight, the moon is out. And he says they look vast in this moonlight, and they are shining, they're glimmering. But he says the bay is tranquil. And bay, you know, it is this water which is enclosed from 3 sides by land, and it's got a narrow opening from one side. So he says this bay is peaceful tonight, it is tranquil tonight, and everything is peaceful. But the light, he says, he talks about the gleaming light, and is gone. Some critics have connected it to the idea of dying light of faith, that in his times the light of faith was going out in the same manner. It was glimmering, going dim, and then finally fading out. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Now he speaks to his wife and he asks her to join him at the window, because he says sweet is the night air. Now he's talking about the fresh breeze, the fresh sea breeze that is reaching him through the window. So he says the breeze is sweet tonight. You see, so up till now we don't get the impression that there's anything wrong with him or with the scene. He's telling you it is all tranquil, it is calm, it is sweet. Then he says, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Now the long line of spray, he's talking about the sea waves hitting the land or hitting the rocks or the cliffs, and then splashing water in all direction in showers. So he's calling it this long line of spray. When the water hits the cliffs, there's a line of spray. So he says, there's a line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen. Now the scene is quiet, the scene is peaceful, the scene is calm, but to the poet's mind now will arise some disturbing thoughts. He says, listen. You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand. He says, listen. He's using the auditory image, and auditory images it plays a significant role. The auditory image will play a significant role in the first two stanzas, and Arnold employs it beautifully. He's asking his wife to listen. He's asking you to listen also. He says everything is peaceful, but listen carefully. There is a sad music. There's a sad music in the sound of the waves hitting the land, hitting the cliffs, hitting the rocks, and then going back. So he is listening to the music of the waves. He's listening to the music caused by the stones or the pebbles that move under the wave. And he says that sound and that music is melancholic. That sound and that music is sad. He calls it the grating roar. The roar, it's a harsh sound. And grate also is a harsh sound, harsh quality, when things are pressed against each other. कोई चीज़ रगड़ खा के गुजरती है. So he's talking about the grating roar. He says, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. Now as the waves come to the land, they bring the pebbles with them, and as they go back, they take the pebbles on the beach with them. So as they take those pebbles back, the pebbles they actually rub against each other, and they produce this noise, this sound. And he can actually, in the quiet and the calmness of the night, he can actually hear the grating noise of the rubbing noise of the pebbles. And as the waves draw back and they go back to the sea, and then they fling those pebbles back when they return to the land. Some of the critics have also compared the pebbles to men's minds. He says the men's minds are like pebbles on the shore that are swayed between belief and disbelief, between faith and skepticism. He says, like the pebbles are taken by the waves with them to the sea, and then they are flung back. There is this to and fro motion of the pebbles. He said in the same way, men's minds, which are like pebbles, they are swaying in both directions. They don't know which to believe, which side to believe. They sometimes are taken to the sea, or sometimes they want to believe what religion tells them, and then they are thrown back on the land, and they are made to believe what the scientific truths are telling them. So they are swaying between belief and disbelief, and between faith and skepticism. Then he says, begin, begin and cease, and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. He's still talking about the waves taking the pebbles with it to the sea, with them to the sea, and then flinging them back again onto the land. He says these waves begin and cease. They begin, there is a motion in them. So the they don't stop. They're continuous. It's a motion that is unending. It never stops. They begin, and it's a continuous motion. They begin, and then they cease. When they come back to the land, they seem to recede. They seem to cease. But then they begin again. They go back to the sea, gain their momentum, come back to the land with a force, and throw the pebbles back onto the land, but then cease. But then they again begin. So this is a continuous motion. He says with tremulous cadence is again the rhythmic motion, this rhythm of cease, begin and cease. But it is a cadence refers to regular, at a regular interval. So it's not like, it's not something, so it has a rhythm, but it has a regular rhythm. The movement of the waves, the music of the waves, it's got a regular rhythm, it's got a regular sound effect. And so that is why it produces a great effect on the poet, on the mind of the poet. And he says, it brings the eternal note of sadness, and it brings to his mind, it reminds him of the eternal note of sadness. So this to and fro movement of the waves and of the pebbles, and the sound and the music that it produces and creates, it leaves an impact on the mind, a sad impact on the mind of the poet, and he hears an eternal note of sadness. It reminds him that this has been like this since eternity. It has always been like this. So he says it has eternally, this music has been from eternity, it has been giving the message of sadness. It is carrying this note of sadness. So this full sea tide and its music, it reminds him of the sad truths of their world. And what are those? In the second stanza he says, Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. Now Sophocles, you must have heard of him. He is a 5th century dramatist, and he used to write about fate and the will of gods, and the role of gods and the role of fates in the lives of his characters. But a great Greek dramatist. Aegean was also a sea or a bay in the Mediterranean Sea. It is a sea. It is a bay in the Mediterranean Sea. It is between Greece and Turkey. Turkey on one side and Greece on the other side, and then you have this bay in the middle, the Aegean Bay. And Sophocles was from Greece. Okay, so this is why he says that Sophocles also heard it on the Aegean. When Sophocles stood on his beach, he heard the same music that Arnold says, I am hearing now. Sophocles long time ago heard the same music, heard the same note of sadness, heard the same music of sadness. And it brought into his mind, he says, the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. And it also brought into his mind this ebb and flow of human misery. Ebb and flow is again the shifting fortunes, that just like the tide ebbs and flows, it begins and ceases. Ebb is cease, stop, and flow is begin. So he says, so just like it ebbs and flows, it stops, it ceases, and then begins. The waves, he says, the human misery is the same. It is a continuous process. Just like the waves are coming and going at a regular interval, so is the human misery. So again, he is giving eternity to it. So humans have been miserable in the past also. So eternally they have been miserable. So this ebb and flow of human misery, it has continued from eternity. This is from the great past, because he's reminding us that Sophocles also heard the same note of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. Now he says, this music or this sound also gives us a thought. It makes us think. It makes us think about the human conditions. It makes us reflect upon the human dilemmas. It makes us think about the human problems. It makes us think about human miseries. So he says, but it arouses some kind of thoughts in our minds when we hear it. So he is disturbed by the thoughts that are rising in his mind as he's listening to the music of these waves and the sound of the pebbles being crushed under the waves. In the third stanza he uses a grand simile. Now this sea, this water that he's talking about, now he's going to compare it to faith, to religion. The metaphor, in fact, that he's going to use for sea is that of faith. He calls it the sea of faith. Was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. He says this sea of faith. Now he's pointing towards the sea that he sees before him, but he's actually thinking of religion. He's actually thinking of faith. He says, once upon a time, this world was full of with sentiments of religion. Once in this world, religion had a dominant role to play. Once in this world, religion still mattered in the lives of the people. So it was at the full. The tide of faith was full. And he says, it lay around earth's shore like folds of a bright girdle furled. Girdle is like a long belt, okay, he says. So it was so long, he says, the sea of faith is then compared to a belt. And he says, like a belt, it surrounded the whole of the earth. It was all around the earth. In other words, he's trying to tell us that there was once the whole of the world had firm faith in religion, in God, and in the values of religion and Christianity. But he says now he's regretting there is loss of faith. There's this gradual loss of man's faith in religion. So as he says, tells us in the next lines, but now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. He says, now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar. He's taking the two together. He's talking about the sea waves withdrawing, sea waves receding and going back from the land, but he means religion going out of the lives of the people. He sees the role of the religion receding from the lives. So he says, now I hear the religion receding with a long melancholic roar. So there is this pain. It is painfully retreating. It is painfully withdrawing from the lives of the people. The religion is. It is retreating, he says, to the breath of the night wind. And where is it going, he says? It is retreating, it is a breath of the night wind. The night wind is also personified. It is breathing. It is breathing, and its breath is making the waves retreat. It is making the waves draw back. So you can talk about the night wind is like the secular thinking. So the secular thinking is actually making the faith, it is making religion retreat. So, and where does it retreat to? He says, down the vast edges, drear and naked shingles of the world. So it goes, where does it go? He says, these waves are going the vast edges. Down the vast edges, drear. Drear is something, you know, is associated with sadness, you know, darkness. So he says, down the vast edges, and it goes down, it goes out of our view, the edges of the world. The waves recede, retreat, it go down the edges of the world, and the naked shingles of the world, and the world becomes naked. The pebbles, shingles are the small stones, pebbles, naturally as the waves recede, he says, the pebbles and the shingles become naked, they are revealed. Meaning, the mankind, as religion recedes from their lives under the effect of the secular thinking, he says, the ugliness of man, the ugliness of man's thinking is revealed. So man's character is now has now become, you know, the ugly part of his character is now revealed for everyone to see. It's become naked, as if he's become naked now. But then Arnold is so disappointed with this thought that he feels that he needs to hold on to something. He's so scared now that he feels that he needs to hold on to something, and he calls upon his wife. He says, "Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so full, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain." Here he introduces another theme. He talks about the theme of appearance versus reality. What he's saying is, something that appears to be good in reality is not good. So he says the Victorian world appears to be advanced, appears on the surface to be attractive, but he says actually in reality it is ugly. How? He says, "Our love, in this world, let us be true to one another at least, where no one is true to another person. Let us at least be true to each other." So in this selfish world, we should be true to each other, because the world which lies before us is like a land of dreams. This is significant, you should remember it. He calls this world like the land of dreams, and you know the land of dream is not a real world. So he says this world, this Victorian world, is like a dream world. It is various, it has got multiple attractions, it is various, multiple attractions. It is beautiful, it is new, because there are new ideas now. People are obsessed with new things, new methodologies, new techniques, new advancements, but it has neither joy nor love. But he says then maybe it may have lot to offer, but it is lacking in so many things. And what is it lacking in? It does not give joy, it does not give love, it has not to give light. Light you can associate with hope, so it doesn't give hope. Certitude is confidence, strength, it doesn't give strength. Peace, it does not have peace, give peace of mind. It does not even give help for pain. And the last oft-quoted, most memorable lines, he says, "And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night." These lines have been remarked upon by critics a lot of times. They're very popular, very famous, and they're oft-quoted. You must also memorize them. He says, he describes this Victorian world as a darkling plain. It is a plain, it is a world which is dark, which is becoming darker with every passing minute. He says we are here as on a darkling plain. We are swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight. He says it is here that people are struggling for their materialistic ambitions, for their materialistic aims, and they're all confused. People don't know what they want from their lives. This is why he calls them confused and he calls them ignorant, because they are not aware of what they truly desire. And he describes them as armies. These people are described as the two armies fighting in the thick of the night, fighting in the dark of the night, without knowing the reason why they are fighting with each other. So he calls the Victorian people, he calls these great intellectual minds of the Victorian era, and he compares them to these two armies who are fighting without any cause, who are fighting without any reason. In the same way, he says that these intellectuals of the Victorian period, they are debating, fighting with each other, but they themselves are confused. They themselves are ignorant. They themselves are not aware of the real truth. And so if they are ignorant and confused, they are also confusing the people with them. This is his main idea, and this is what he's hitting at. And it is this picture of the Victorian world that he gives you in this poem that is so significant and that is so important. But it is at the same time also how he perceives it, how he understands it, what is his attitude towards these changes in the Victorian age, which is important. So you need to keep all of that in mind, and you need to understand it, that it is a melancholic poem, but it's a philosophical poem, because he is talking about man, he's talking about the future of mankind, he's talking about the existence of mankind, he's talking about the needs of the mankind. So and he's trying to find solutions, but he doesn't offer us any solutions. This is why the poem is melancholic, because he sees that the world is becoming darker, because he says we are here on a darkling plane. It was growing darker and darker day by day. So that was Dover Beach. There were some themes that have emerged from this poem. I will look at them with you now very briefly. We see that the poem was held together by emotion, there was a unity of emotions and sentiments. And but you also notice that there was hardly any relation between the first part and the second part, but this unity of emotion and sentiments that united both the parts, although both of them shared totally different ideas. Another aspect of this poem is that it describes to you the effects of industrialization, which I talked about earlier also. So Arnold is describing to you this changing Victorian world as a result of advancement and growth of science and technology. And thirdly, he's condemning the loss of faith. He's condemning the loss of religion and the loss of meaning of life, which is the result of secular thinking. These are the prominent, themes of the poem. It's a unidirectional poem. You need not, look further away from what the message of the poem is. You need to understand the mood of the poem, the attitude of the poet, and the historical facts of the Victorian age. And you will be able to, that way you will be able to understand what truly is it that the poet is trying to communicate.